My student gamed the system. This originally started as a response to a different post, but required so much explanation, I figured it deserved a post of its own. Once upon a time, I taught at a private high school in Japan that was attached to a well-regarded university. It wasn't the JET program, but a similar setup, in that native speakers were brought in to teach English conversation, listening and speaking, while Japanese teachers taught English grammar and writing. For those who don't know, many Japanese don't speak much English, but the way it is typically taught, mostly for university entrance exams, most Japanese can read and write English much better than they can speak/listen to it. So one day, I get a new student, and he immediately introduces himself as a fluent American teenager, aka English. He'd spent several years in the US, and his family sent him back to Japan to improve his Japanese and prepare him for university entrance exams. He was a cool kid, and I enjoyed talking to him about music, television, and cultural things. I also excused him from most activities in my class since they were below his level, and I'd let him read his books in English while I worked with the other students, and he often jumped in as an assistant, helping his classmates alongside me. I also turned a deaf ear to when he taught his classmates dirty words, because that's important information, even if it isn't appropriate for me to teach them. One time, I was trying to correct the pronunciation of the word election, as there was an election at the time. Most of my students were pronouncing it as erection, and I was trying my darndest to get them to understand the difference between the two words. This student finally jumped in and explained in Japanese what an erection was, and after a very good laugh, their pronunciation improved. Whatever works, man. But I digress. Everything's great, and we had no issues. I truly enjoyed having him in class. One day, he came in very happy and told me how he finally got out of his Japanese English class. Like I mentioned earlier, students also take English with a Japanese teacher in grammar, reading, and writing. And let me tell you, I fully believe many Japanese have a much better understanding of English grammar than native speakers. Typically, we know when something's wrong, but can't explain why. Many Japanese could tell you exactly why it's wrong, but I digress again. Obviously, this class was also far below his level, but his teacher made him participate, and even snatched his book from him and hit him with it when he was caught off task. Teachers hitting a kid isn't unheard of, but not common either. As revenge, this kid does as he's told. He starts participating by constantly correcting his teacher's work on the board, worksheets, etc., all to the amusement of his peers. Finally, the teacher told him to shut the heck up and to just read his book. He only had to take exams, which he was fine with. He's happy, and I enjoyed hearing about how he stuck it to his teacher, a man I rather disliked myself. I've gotta say, the teacher allowing the smart student to teach his classmates bad words is actually really smart. Whether you like it or not, they're such a core part of English vocabulary now, and it stops them from making a mistake and using it incorrectly. Don't return a broken controller? Fine, I'll play you at your own game. To preface, I know where the cashier, C, was coming from, but his attitude about the whole situation was what riled me up. So, in the UK, we have a store called Game. I'll spare explaining what they sell. So anyway, I was looking through the second-hand cabinet and found an Xbox Elite controller I liked the look of. I ended up buying it and took it home, about an hour's drive away because I live in the middle of nowhere. Plugged it in excitedly to make use of the extra features of my new controller, only to find the A button was mushed in and wouldn't register any input. Clearly broken. As soon as you tried to press it, it didn't click. Annoyed that nobody had checked this before putting it on sale, I traveled back the next day to return it for a working controller. I handed over the controller and the case it came with and explained the situation. "Have you got the charging cable?" This is where I messed up. I left the micro USB cable plugged into my PC. "No, very sorry, I left it at home, but you can clearly tell this button is not clicking and is broken." C struggled to hide his grin and proceeded to tell me there was no way of testing the controller to see if it was faulty without the cable. Surely there's a micro USB cable lying around you can use. "I still can't return it without the cable." This I get, but I'm asking for a simple swap, like for like. Don't need the accessories, just the controller. He was getting a mad control ego trip over condescendingly explaining the technicalities of store policy. Annoyed with the fact it was going to be another 2-hour round trip, I left with my tail between my legs, passing that same second-hand cabinet on my way out. That's when the light bulb moment hit. I looked at the Elite controller they had put in the cabinet to replace the one I bought the previous day, and looked back at old Smuggins back at the checkout, who was just elated he had won. Or so he thought. I walked confidently back to the checkout, waited in line, and got to the smirking cashier, who now had a slightly confused, worried look on his face. "I'd like to buy one Xbox Elite controller from your second-hand cabinet, please," I said in my most polite voice, as if it was the first time meeting C. Looking like I'd just asked him for his grandma's ashes, he tilted his head, puzzled, and went and fetched it for me. I paid for my controller, cable and all, and marched out of the store. A little cable swap later, and I walked immediately back into the store. This is where C and I locked eye contact from across the store. His face was even more puzzled than before. I got to the front of the line and was served by the manager, as C was busy with another customer. "I bought this controller off you yesterday, and as you can see, the A button is smashed in and broken." This is where the penny dropped for C, and he figured out what I was up to. After handling the controller, the manager confirmed that, "Yes, it is. Very sorry about that, sir. We'll get that refunded for you, no problem. Do you have all the accessories it came with?" Me, locking eyes with C at the adjacent checkout, who was clearly listening and trying to involve himself in the transaction. "As a matter of fact, I do. Charging cable and all." At this point, C was spitting feathers, trying to interject and exclaim I had just swapped out the cable 30 seconds prior, but was too busy with a customer who was asking questions about something. "Do you want the money going back onto the card that initially paid?" "Yes, please, but you don't need to check to see if it's faulty by plugging it in first?" Still holding eye contact with C. "No, that's not necessary. The A button is clearly broken." As C got redder in the face, my grin widened until I looked like a Cheshire cat. I thanked the manager for his help and gave a nod to C, and left with my head held high and my new working controller. To some, this isn't anything to write home about, but for me, it was extremely satisfying to see C's face at the end of the ordeal. That's just hilarious. Honestly, I wish C got the chance to interject, because he would have babbled out something like, but he just swapped the charger with another charger, it's not the same one. Just for the manager to probably go, "Who cares?" and take it back anyway. Us people can't do anything right? Many years ago, think the early 2000s, I worked at a US health insurance company. I'd worked my way through the grunt queues and was splitting my job time between being a patient advocate and a provider representative. Yeah, I know, those two are often in conflict. But here begins the story. A local hospital had recently re-signed their contract with us. They were looking to double their pay schedule, and they were one of the only hospitals in the area, so they had us over a barrel. But they were also notorious for screwing up their billing, so some new clauses were added to the new contract. Enter Jane, a billing agent from the hospital. She calls in with an issue, and I can tell this woman didn't have her coffee. "You people screwed up a claim. Again! I don't know why you can't just do your jobs and pay us right." Well, let me take a look for you and see if I can't find out what happened.
Fine, but you better be fast. I know you guys like to try to make us wait, so we hang up and go away.
She then proceeds to tell me the date and patient of the claim. I politely put her on hold and look it over, and I start to smile, because this is beautiful. Thank you for waiting. I see the claim denied as provider liable,
which is obviously wrong, because we had the surgery authorized, and you people screwed up, so just fix it.
As I was saying, this was denied as provider liable. While the patient was authorized for a rhinoplasty, nose job, due to medical need, I see the claim was sent by you with a diagnosis showing it was cosmetic.
Well, obviously it isn't, so just click your buttons and change that to the right one.
I'm sorry, it's considered fraud for me or anyone here to alter the diagnosis you submitted. Also, you billed us on the same claim form for a breast augmentation, boob job, liposuction, and facelift, all with the same cosmetic indicators.
Then I'll just resubmit it with a medical code.
And it will be denied as a duplicate.
Then I'll pull it back and send in a new one.
You can feel free to do that, but please be advised that a copy of this claim and your call notation will be sent to the approval team. Also, please review your new contract for billing guidelines.
And just what is that supposed to mean?
This claim is denied as provider liable correctly, and according to your contract, you are not allowed to bill the patient. So, a letter has been triggered to be sent to them advising that the services on this claim were denied and they are not responsible for the charges, according to the provider contract.
What? What do you mean? What am I supposed to do with this bill?
I would suggest you work with your financial officers, as this will need to be a full write-off. Click. I then write up the letter for that patient, which definitely isn't a normal thing to do. It may not have been sent if I wasn't so cranky at being called incompetent. And you better believe I made sure everyone in provider services and medical approval reviewed every claim for that hospital with a fine-tooth comb, in case us people screwed up again. I think the only real winner in this story is the patient who got all that free surgery. That stuff isn't cheap. So I hope if I ever need surgery done on something, this same mistake happens. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I'll see you next time.